I was scouted to join a playthrough of Minecraft's Hardest Skyblock mod pack with 31 other players, and I was invited to lead 3 other players as a veteran. The only issue is that I am not really a veteran, so join me on my quest as I attempt to get as far as I can in star technology before the server begins. Last episode, we worked our way up to medium voltage and made a circuit assembler. Today, our goal is just as lofty, HV. This goal is incredibly far and will take quite some time to achieve, so we should set some intermediary goals in the meantime, like automating oxygen, silicon, and aluminum. Real quick, if you want to follow progress and help out in real time, head over to the Star Technology Discord and find the cooked or not cooked thread in the screenshots category. Anyways, I won't hold you guys any longer. Time to progress. Alright, you guys may be noticing that I'm standing on top of the EBF right now. That's because I kept my promise from the end of last episode and I cleaned up the base a bit. So this absolute mess that was all condensed into one chunk has been moved over to here to make space for all of our MV machines in the future. The future being right about now. Now, as excited as I am to get into MV, we have one more thing we need to get done for the time being, and that is make ourselves a cutter, because I want to make sure that all of my parts in MV are as cheap as they could possibly ever be, and the cutter is going to help me get things like bolts a lot cheaper than I can right now. And so for that, we're going to need cobalt brass, I believe. Yes, we're going to need cobalt brass to make the buzzsaw blade. We're going to need 4 ingots of this stuff, which now that I look at it is pretty cheap, and I only need 1 cobalt dust, which is really nice because the only way I can see to get cobalt within a reasonable time frame at the moment is to centrifuge copper dust here. So once we have that, we'll be smooth sailing. Okay, never mind. While I was working on this stuff, the rest of the copper that was in the macerator ended up actually making the cobalt that I needed. I guess that mixer is still happening in the end. Now, while I'm processing that, I can't forget to throw in my components in circuit 3, there we go, so that we can start making some signalum, which is what I need for wires in MV. Signalum is going to be the replacement to the soul-infused wires for when I actually start making MV machines, which I think I'm going to line up just opposite to these ones. I think it'll just be easier that way. So while that's running, let's go ahead and make our cutter real quick, which we had all the materials for. Isn't that nice? Yeah, I'll just throw it on here. Now, this cutter is going to be very useful, but if I just go here, I'm going to yoink the lubricant that we already have here, and we're going to throw that in here because we do need lubricant to run the machine. But now we can cut rods into bolts a lot more efficiently. So I'm going to need rubies later on, and I'd rather get on that right now by going to grab some gravel from over by the create setup, so that once I'm ready to make the laser lens, I will be able to. Alright, so while that's running, we have our first stack of signalums done. And now we can go ahead and smelt it in the quad EBF. And while we wait for that, let's start making the frames for our MV machines. Now the question is, what MV machines do we want first? So the first 3 machines I'm going to make are the assembler, the electrolyzer, and the centrifuge. Because the assembler is going to get me the energy hatches, which I need to put on my multi-block machines in order to speed them up and increase their tier. And the electrolyzer and centrifuge will allow me to better process my ores. And then the cutter is, of course, going to be for cutting gems into lenses for wafer processing later on, which is going to require the MV assembler because I need these other machines in order to process vanadium. So first things first is the good circuits. We're going to be crafting 16 batches of them, which is going to cost us quite a few LV circuits, which I did craft a lot off camera. I crafted 2 stacks of them. I'm hoping this is going to last long enough for me to get the silicon wafers going, which will let me make the cheaper variant of these circuits. But all in all, these things are really cheap at this point, so I can just make more if ever I do actually run out. Man, I absolutely love these cheaper circuits, these cheaper recipes. It makes everything so much easier. Anyways, with the circuits currently being worked on, I'm going to go ahead and make a stack of aluminum plates in the bender real quick, because I have a feeling I'm going to need just as many aluminum plates as I did steel plates, and I want to be ahead of the curve right now. You know, there are some things in life that never change, like death, taxes, and needing wrought iron for stuff. You know, the day that I can make steel without having to go through this whole wrought iron process, and I'm not making a kiln, I will be a happy man. Alright, these 2 stacks should last me long enough. Alright, our circuits are done, our plates are done, it's time to get crafting. And then I need copper cables, which only doable in an assembler, I see. Okay. Well, that sure does put a wrench in my plans, but I'm sure my signalum is almost done. Alright, let's take the cables we have and just go ahead and ship it. And let's craft our electrolyzer with the cables. Alright. We still can't power this thing, but we will be able to soon. Now it's time to look into this centrifuge, which is going to require MV motors, which is copper nickel wires, aluminum rods, and magnetic steel. Alright, while we're waiting for this, let's go ahead and throw up a second machine line over here. Throw on the MV 4 amp energy converter. It's in the wrong direction. There we go. And run a wire out from it. Yeah, instead of putting it over there, I'm going to put it over here because then it's just going to be in range of this. Alright, so now if we throw in all the line stuff, electrolyzer doesn't have a specific spot it's going to go, so we're just going to throw that on here, and then we just connect these two. And bam, we now have an electrolyzer in MV tier. Now, what it's useful for right now? Not so much, but we can now electrolyze clay for aluminum, which is going to be our main source of aluminum in the near future. Alright, now getting back on track with the other machines, the centrifuge is going to be almost done once I have all the copper nickel wires I need here. Alright, so if I throw in my wires, my cables here, I can make my advanced centrifuge. I can make my motors for the advanced centrifuge. There you go. So now that's our second MV machine, and what it does is not much right now, but I can now get the vanadium for the cutter, the MV cutter here. So now we have vanadium magnetite dust, which we can then centrifuge again for vanadium dust, which we're going to need for, vanadium steel here, which is going to be for our MV cutter. Assembler time. MV conveyor module. So I'm going to need 10 MV motors, which is going to be pretty expensive, but I have enough rods. I have enough magnet rods. I have 40 or more wires, yes, and I have copper cables, more than enough. Okay. We have enough for all of our motors. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a little bit of pain when crafting that, because I know that went through quite a few resources. And here's the 2 pistons for the robot arms, which we can afford right now. That's cool. And bam, advanced assembler. Now we have the assembler, we can now make MV coils. Okay, so back to the cutter. We need to electrolyze the chromite, which is going to get us the vanadium we need. And it's also going to have a nice byproduct of a bunch of oxygen, which we can then use in the arc furnaces to make steel. So this is going to be a very good thing. You know what? I'm going to make tanks. Yep, that's an it's an MV mixer recipe. So we're going to have to add a mixer to our list of machines. So now I'm guessing we're going to need bronze for all of our rotors and pumps. Is that right? Yes, it is. So, you know what? I'm just going to make a bunch of bronze. I'm just going to make a bunch of bronze, period. Well, while we're making our new bronze rotors, let's give this new cutter a spin. So, 1 rod is supposed to give 4 bolts, which I think is absolutely crazy. Yeah, look at that. 4 bolts! And it went up into the chest here. That's amazing. And then bronze rotors. We have a couple, because I have a feeling I'm going to need a lot in the future. So, let's just go ahead. MV mixer, baby. Anyways, let's chuck in our steel, vanadium, and chromium. And in 20 seconds, we'll have our vanadium steel, which we can then chuck into the arc furnaces, which are done processing our signalum, and then make our MV cutter. So while we're waiting, let's go ahead and make the lathe. That's 2 motors, and our vanadium steel is done. So let's go chuck it over here. 80 seconds per ingot is kind of insane, but it's going to be worth it, because then we'll have our cutter, we'll be able to make our lenses, and then we will be able to make our wafers. So, while we are waiting for some of these machines to process stuff, I think it's high time we got set up for clay. Because clay here can be electrolyzed, if I just go ahead, clay dust, electrolyzed into silicon and aluminum. The lithium and sodium, I'm going to hold on to them. I'm not sure exactly what their use is, except for like maybe batteries. The sodium either, but it'll be good to hold on to them. So clay dust can be electrolyzed here into aluminum and sodium, because we are starting to run low on aluminum. And I just now got the void extractor back up and running. With our vanadium steel done, we can now work on our cutter, which is going to be pretty cheap overall. Alright, MV cutter, here we are. We're going to need some lubricant to help run it, so I'm hoping we've got some to spare in here. Yes, we do. Since the electric furnace is free, it's going to be time to start working on the big project, which is going to be silicon boules, which is going to require a little bit of gallium arsenide. And so if I chuck all of this in, it should begin to cook them. Oh, I have to enable circuit 2 here. So these silicon boules, they can be cut into wafers, and the wafers can be engraved into whatever we need. ILC wafers, LPIC wafers, RAM, CPU, ULPIC. Now the ones we want are the ULPIC wafers and the ILC wafers. Alright, we have our circuits, which means it is time to craft our lathe. And now this lathe is going to let us turn the gem sheets, which we get from the cutter, which we get from geodes. Our gem sheets, which we get from all of that, are going to be able to be turned into lenses. And now we need to make our laser engraver to be able to actually utilize these lenses. Now for this MV emitter, I'm going to need an electrum, which I think shouldn't be too hard to make. Yeah, it's just gold and silver. And then I'm also going to need an exquisite emerald, which does put a wrench in my plans. But I don't think it's going to be a huge deal because we're going to be crafting a basic sifter here. Anyways, 16 zinc foils later, we can go ahead and make 2 item filters. And bam, we now have a basic sifter. Go ahead and throw it on this end. And now we need emeralds, which so graciously we have 10 geodes of. Now I've just realized I'm also going to need a washer, which does put a wrench in my plans, but it's not too much that I can't handle it. Lucky me, looks like I got a flawless emerald. Alright, electrum is over here, and we can turn that into a couple wires. Actually, no, it's lathe, it's for rods. Alright, now I'm gonna need me 9 ruby geodes, and I'm also gonna need me 9 sapphire geodes if I have those. Yes, I do. That is a great thing to know. Now we can throw these in the cutter and make ourselves some raw sapphires. Also going to throw the rubies into the basic cutter, just have everything running at once. So the electrum is done. We can go ahead and make our emitter and our laser engraver. What are we missing? Oh, I only have 1 piston. There we go, that's fixed. You guys did not see that. MV laser engraver. So now we can throw on whatever lenses we need. I'm going to go ahead and put barrels on top of all these machines. Anyways, we now have our sapphire lens, and I'm pretty sure our rubies are also done. Yes, they are. So let's go ahead and smelt these and turn them into a ruby lens. Now that we have our 2 lenses, it's time to put them to work because the silicon boules are actually done. So our silicon boules can be put in the cutter to turn them into the silicon wafers, which this does take a while, but it is going to make a lot of wafers. Now that that is all done and dealt with, it's time to set up some proper automation for aluminum because we are running out and we need some automation going. So my first executive order as the guy who will be automating aluminum through clay electrolysis is that I'm going to need a large barrel. Bam, input hatch has water. Now the input bus, here we go. We're going to go ahead and we're going to make an item card with a dust filter on it. We go ahead and we grab from here over to here, and this is going to be inputting dust into the machine. It's going to make a ton of clay. It's all going to go into the output bus, which we're going to grab here with an extract card, which actually, now that I think of it, I could just have the macerator on the back here, flat input, LV macerator. We can throw it onto the back of this, set its automatic output to the back of there. And so this is going to be automatically producing aluminum and silicon, as well as sodium and lithium, but I'm not sure exactly what those are going to be very useful for. Alright, so this is some fine aluminum wire. This is going to be enough for 2 MV power hatches. So first things first, the electric ore factory is going to have 2 hatches. Rock filtrator is going to have 1. The void extractor is going to have 1, so that's a total of 4. And then we're going to need another 8 of them for the electric blast furnace. So our cutter has now also produced some IC chips, which are going to be needed for integrated circuits. Alright, back to the task at hand though. Let's throw all of this in an MV assembler and let all of this run and make us all of the coils we're going to need. So I accidentally made a bunch of foils because I wasn't paying attention. So I guess that's what I get. I gotta reprocess all this aluminum. So while we wait for all of this aluminum processing and a bunch of other junk to work, I think it's time we set our sights on another material project. And this one is going to be our oxygen production. And so for our oxygen production, we're going to need a few more LV machines, which we should be able to afford rather easily. So why don't we put it up near here so that I can use this converter. So I've hooked everything up here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to throw in, this should be our card that has gravel in it. Yes. To connect everything, there we go. The sifter should be operational now. This still has clay. This is turning the gravel into flint, the flint into flint dust. The flint dust is getting centrifuged into silicon dioxide, and the silicon dioxide is being electrolyzed into oxygen gas. And every 2,000 gas here is, I believe, enough to make 10 ingots of steel in the arc furnace. Which, speaking of the arc furnace, it's now our next objective. 8 MV energy hatches, and we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna turn off all of the arc furnaces for the time being. And we're gonna swap out all of these hatches for MV ones. Oh, I just realized I'm gonna need a 16 amp energy converter for MV as well. Alright, a whole lot of processing later, and we have our 16 amp converter. Alrighty, yeah, now we can pause these things properly. And then yank out all the old wires, yank out the old hatches, and then from there, swap in the new hatches. There you go. And now I can just throw on my wire like this, and then swap this converter for the new MV converter. We can now work at HV. So if I turn this on, aluminum only takes 22 seconds for an ingot. And we're running 4 recipes in parallel, which means 5 seconds for an ingot of aluminum. A little over 5 seconds for an ingot of aluminum. Look at that. About this time last episode, I was getting my first machine set up, and now I'm already creeping my way up to HV. Oh my goodness. We're running out of power. Our base is finally running out of power. The EBFs are completely draining our energy supply. Okay, so since I've reached MV, I have access to a new item in this shop. I want to see if I can afford it. Yes, if I claim all, I can afford them. Let's go ahead and buy ourselves some jet boots. So I'm pretty sure that throwing them into the power slot of any machine, yeah, there we go. I can just completely drain my power system to charge these things. So while those are charging, I'm going to go and tend to my magnetite because I'm making another set of magnets. So we're still waiting on all of the overcharged diamonds, and I'm also going to have to do the same with a bunch of gold. So while we're waiting for all of this to run, why don't we work on our first batch of integrated circuits? So what I want to do is I want to make 2 stacks of these like I made 2 stacks of the other LV circuits. And what's cool with these circuits is when you go to craft them into the MV tier, they convert 1-to-1 to MV. Which is very, very good, especially if you're using the better recipe. Now, they do convert 2-to-1 in HV, but it's not a big deal, because then once we have the HV circuits, we can make the better tier circuit assembler, and then we can also make the better circuits, period. So these circuits are going to require a lot of components, but I have made quite a few ahead of time. You may have seen me pop into the crafter occasionally and grab a bunch of stuff like resistors and circuit boards in there, which I just realized we don't have enough resistors. That's unfortunate. Alright, now that the resistors are done, I can use the assembler to make myself a couple more diodes. You know what? I need polyethylene for diodes, and I think it might be time to actually try our hand at making that. And it's going to require me a lot of chemical reactors, but I think it's going to be worth it. So that's going to be 5 chemical reactors and 1 distillery. So this is going to be the one that produces the ethylene, and so this one on its side. This is going to be the one that makes our liquid polyethylene, which means we need oxygen routed to this one. So this one makes sulfuric acid. Then this outputs the distillery in front of it after it's done making the polyethylene. And then these 2 is for the sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide, sulfuric acid, ethylene. Okay, cool. I've got it figured out. Grab a fluid cell, throw it on top here. Bam, fluid card input. Set this as an input. Now all of these have oxygen. this, once it has enough oxygen, is going to start producing sulfur dioxide. This makes sulfur trioxide. Then I set this as the output. Sulfur trioxide goes in here, and then this only requires water. Gonna put it in the floor here. It's gonna be nice and compact. So there we go. This is making sulfuric acid, and the ethanol and the sulfuric acid, I don't know which circuit it needs. Oh, it needs an MV chemical reactor. Now that does put a wrench in my plans. So, chemical reactor, MV. Tell me about it. 2 MV circuits, which I currently don't have. Neato. And an MV motor that I supposedly cannot afford. Alright, our circuit is now ready to be made. Then we'll finally be able to wrap up the chemical line, which will let us get liquid polyethylene. Anyway, it's time to throw this chemical reactor on here. So it'll take a minute, and it will produce us a bunch of polyethylene. Anyways, diluted sulfuric acid and whites. Perfect. Now it should output everything nicely. So, polyethylene, we have it now. Anyways, now we can get back to making diodes. Because now that we have the polyethylene, we can make diodes as cheap as they come. Let's grab a few buckets of this and head over to our assembler so that I can throw in the polyethylene, throw in the gallium arsenide, and throw in our wires. And then let this run until we have 2 stacks of diodes. So all this is going to get me 2 stacks of LV circuits, plus they're going to be transferable 1-to-1 with MV circuits once I choose to make those, which I definitely am. And that's 2 stacks of integrated circuits. We can now upgrade these into MV circuits and then eventually upgrade those into HV circuits, but we are still a ways away from HV. Now that we have a proper foothold in MV, it's time to set our sights on a familiar goal, a circuit assembler. Now this time, it's blue. The HV circuits required to make it are going to need transistors, which need silicon ingots, which need Kanthal coils, look, you get the point. Time to get back to work. So as much as I want to work on the next set of projects, we don't have enough circuits to do that. And that's why we're going to have to craft all of these into MV circuits, because I realized that I have LV circuits, like right here, I have a small stack of them, so if ever I need LV machines, I can just use those. So upgrading these into MV isn't going to be too expensive, it's probably just going to be time consuming with the resistors and the diodes. At least now we get to see our polyethylene in good use in making diodes that are going to take forever to craft. I might want to put this in the MV assembler now that I think of it, considering this thing is likely going to be much faster. But while the assembler was working, I figured I would start working on another project, which is right here in this mixer. It's Kanthal. So Kanthal is going to be needed to upgrade our EBF once more to the next tier, which is going to let us smelt stuff like stainless steel and silicon ingots. While all of that is running, I am going to quickly kick all of this back up because I realized I was out of acid, and we're going to be modifying this setup once we have our machines, of course, in order to hijack some of this ethylene and make polyvinyl chloride. But before we can make the polyvinyl chloride, we're going to need chlorine. And for the chlorine, usually I'd make it with sodalite, but that's not a very consistent source of chlorine, nor is it a fast one. So I want to make consistent chlorine. And while I'm working on that, I'm also centrifuging all of my rare earths in an attempt to get as much neodymium as I can so that I can try and keep up with power generation. So while all of that is running, I'm going to continue working on some other resources that I'm going to need in the near future, like crushing topaz and blue topaz in the macerator, in order to eventually be able to process these and get fluorine. Now the question is, can I wall share this thing? Oh my god, I can wall share this thing. Oh, that's neat. So what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to have this input hatch for water be shared in between the 2 machines. So now that that's built, we're going to need to make some machines, mainly a centrifuge and a electrolyzer. So now this is going to be outputting seawater into the centrifuge. So now if I throw some sand in here, there we go, this will produce some seawater, which is going to output into the centrifuge. The centrifuge is going to turn it into various salts as well as salt water. And then the salt water is going to be electrolyzed into chlorine. There we go. So now we have hydrogen and chlorine automated. It's also making sodium hydroxide, which no idea if this thing is useful. I mean, we can electrolyze it. That's cool. And there we go. There's our saltpeter and our rock salt. And at the same time, the Kanthal is also done, so we can start smelting that. And as well, another batch of boules is done, so we can go ahead and throw all of these in here. Alright, we've got more free time, so I guess it's time to check in on our neodymium and see how much we got. We got 17 pieces of neodymium. Now this is going to do wonders. Alright, now since we're approaching the completion of all of our MV circuits, I'm going to start working on making the 2 LV chemical reactors that I'm going to be needing for my polyvinyl chloride production. Our resistors are done while I'm working on the chemical reactors. I also realized that it's more optimal to cut my geodes instead of grind them, so that's, you know, I'm not mad. I'm not mad that I wasted a ton of geodes on that. Anyways, there's 2 chemical reactors. We're just going to have one here and one here. Alright, let's go ahead and let's hook up the chlorine to the chemical reactor here. And now we're producing vinyl chloride, which should output to the left here. Okay, I think I might almost have this solved. I just need a spot to output my polyvinyl chloride. There we go, just crafted 16 fluid cells. So I'm going to go ahead and throw one down here, set the front as an input, and there we have it. We have polyvinyl chloride. So I still have one more project that I can start for, you know, the while we're waiting thing, and that is going to be making methane. That's going to require yet another LV chemical reactor. Alright, most of our bolts are done, so I'm going to go ahead and chuck that in there and just start the craft. These are going to take a while to make, but we're going to be able to spend them as we get them. Alright, we have 10 circuits. That should be enough to support most of the machines we want to make. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and make this last LV chemical reactor real quick. Now we can set this up here, throw in some carbon dust, and now we're going to be producing methane over a very, very long period of time. Oh my god. Moving on from that, though, we have our MV circuits, which means it's time to get to work on our next few projects, which starts with an MV centrifuge once again for the raw ore slurry. Anyways, bing bang bosh, one centrifuge later. And I will just throw it onto this over here. And now we're going to run this signal wire all the way out under here. So now this advanced centrifuge, while the UI is big, it's going to be turning raw ore slurry into lepidolite, pyrochlor, pyrolusite, and magnesite, which are all going to be important in their own rights, as well as mixed mineral residue, which right now is not important because we need HV to process it, as well as molten ore mixture, which we can't process right now, but it is going to be very important later on. So next up on our list of MV machines to make is going to be a chemical bath, because these hot Kanthal ingots are hot. I can't use them, which means I need to give them a chemical bath in order to cool them down, because a vacuum freezer is not available at this current tier. So the chemical bath is one of the more expensive machines, but it's nothing we can't handle, I don't think. So chemical bath, we're going to throw it down right here. We're going to set its output to the top. And now I'm just going to yoink some distilled water from over here. And now we can just go ahead and grab the Kanthal ingots, which damage me when I hold them. I need to go ahead and throw them in here, and that's too much in my inventory to hold. Let's just go ahead and throw them back in there. Okay, that was a close one. Now the chemical bath is going to slowly turn these hot Kanthal ingots into usable normal Kanthal ingots, which each of these now cooled Kanthal ingots we're going to throw into the wire mill in order to make our coils. Well, turns out I need aluminum foils, so scrapping all those foils I made on accident was not the right play, I guess. Anyways, I'm going to need the foils for the Kanthal coils, which is going to be for the silicon ingots, and our Kanthal is currently still cooling down. While I was waiting, all of my circuits finally got finished, so that's neat. As of right now, we're still waiting for all of that Kanthal to coil. Wow, that Kanthal to coil. We're still waiting for all the Kanthal to cool. Alright, we should start to craft the coils at least, even though we don't have enough materials for all of them. We should still craft as many as we can for the time being. Our coils are finally done, and now we can swap one of our EBFs for the new Kanthal coils. At least I think we can. All the while we'll use these new Kanthal coils to make either more Kanthal or silicone. Probably going to be making silicone first because I actually need it like stat, and the Kanthal, it can kind of wait. A much longer process. And while we're waiting for all of the silicon dioxide to produce, we're going to go ahead and chuck in all of this and set this to a different circuit because I think I need a different circuit to make silicon ingots. I completely forgot that I need oxygen to make silicon ingots. There we go. See, now it's working. Making me silicon, and it's also producing a lot of carbon monoxide, which I think I'm just going to trash for the time being. So the rest of the Kanthal coils are going to take absolutely forever to do, so why don't we focus on this silicon that we just got? So silicon is going to be absolutely integral in making HV circuits because it's what is required for transistors, which are basically the next component that we're going to be learning to make. And transistors, pretty cheap silicon-wise, requires polyethylene, which we already have, and requires fine tin, which we already have, which means we can make HV circuits. And so now I propose the final objective of this video, the circuit assembler. Now, an MV circuit assembler is roughly the same thing as an LV circuit assembler, except now we're using MV components instead of LV components, which is why ahead of time I've been sifting some emeralds, and we were able to get 2 flawlesses and an exquisite, which does solve that problem for us. Now, luckily for me, advanced integrated circuits don't require a new type of board, but they do require RAM chips and IC chips. Luckily, I made 900 RAM chips. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn 32 MV circuits into 16 HV circuits. We're going to batch craft all of it together, and we're going to have everything we need to start HV next episode. Now let's get back to our components. We are going to need quite a few motors for this, so that's going to be 3 plus 4, I believe. And we're out of copper nickel wires. Couple copper nickel wires later, we can now make our conveyor modules. Now we craft the piston for the robot arm. Now we craft the robot arm. Now we craft our emitter, and then our hull. And now all we're missing, we're gonna throw everything back in here, is our circuits. Now we were able to make a stack 40 of transistors, which actually isn't enough now that I think of it. Next component is going to be annealed copper bolts, so let's just go ahead and chuck all of these on the lathe, and then the cutter, and then the lathe again, I believe. Let's throw all this tin into the extractor, and then put in our ingredients. And we're going to have to refill the annealed copper and the fine electrum wire as we go, but for now, we are producing advanced integrated circuits. Our first 2 HV circuits are done, and that also means that we can now craft our advanced circuit assembler, which means we are now basically completed MV. Okay, so I may or may not have a little overcalculated the amount needed to make all of the circuits, but they're all done. Now all that's left is to finish these Kanthal coils. Alright, with this coil, I'll be able to double my Kanthal production speed by having 2 functioning Kanthal EBFs. And now I need to wait again to get the other remaining 16 coils. While all the Kanthal cooks and the video comes to a close, I think it's time we take aim at another large goal that, to be honest, kind of terrifies me. AE2. Any advice that helps me not completely mess up my infrastructure for the future with this stuff is appreciated and wanted. And don't forget to subscribe to catch the next part. For now, this is Moss, signing off.